everybody's toolbox looks different. Yours may look different from mine, because everybody uses different software, whether it be paid, whether it be free, or freemium, or whatever. It all looks different. But in the end, it gets the job done. So that's what this video is about. This is a list of software that can be used to make your content and organized based on use case, i.e. graphic design, video editing, basic stuff, etc. The video will focus primarily on free alternatives to the paid stuff, because generally speaking, people who are starting out don't have a whole lot of money, especially in these tough times. So having that free alternatives that work, they get the job done for now, but once they start making a little bit of money, then we can move into the more complicated stuff, which will be a topic for another video. Trust me on that one. I would also like to mention, before we nosedive right in, I stream every Thursday and Friday on Twitch at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I also have a Discord, and that will also be linked in the description below. We talk about things like anime, retro nostalgia, just general tech stuff, OBS stuff, all that kind of crap that you'll see on this channel in the next coming little bit. Can also be talked about there. If you want to talk to me about that whole stuff on Twitch stream as well. Again, everything will be description down below. Let's get into it. All right, before we can get into the more complicated stuff, you need to learn the basics. Now, the basic software that I'm going to describe here is nothing more than just stuff for writing scripts. Because when you're creating content, you want to have some sort of direction. You don't want to ad-libbing is okay in a certain extent, but you want to have some sort of direction to go about creating content with. And that's what the script is for. And you could spend the money for Microsoft Office. Sure, you could do that. But there are good alternatives that are free that will get the job done just well. And my personal favorite is LibreOffice. LibreOffice is a Microsoft Office alternative that has much of the same functionality as Microsoft Office, if not all the same, but for 100% less price. That's going to work out fine, isn't it? You will find all of the main things in LibreOffice that you would ever need to make more Office-related stuff, like presentations, spreadsheets, documents, of course, because that's what you need anyway. And you can do a lot of things with it. I won't go into the specific details of how everything works, because I want to keep this video relatively short for the time being. But if you don't want to install anything, Google Docs is probably the best alternative to which is kind of funny. Because it's all web-based, you organize everything through Google Drive. However, the only caveat is that you have a limited amount of space to do that with. But if you're only using it for documents, that's not really much of a worry. With the basics out of the way, you can now kind of start to consider more complicated tools to add to your toolbox. Graphic design is probably the first I'm going to tackle here. Now, graphic design software is a must for content creators. And the reason for it is that you use them to make panels, overlays, thumbnails, logos, all that crap. Stuff that makes your identity, it makes your brand. And people, when they look for stuff in content creation, they're not there just for you. They're there to see your brand. Now, don't get me wrong. Your personality is just as important, but you can't really identify a person just by looking at their personality, because a personality is not quite as visible of a thing as a brand would be. So that's why you need graphic design software. Now, you could use Photoshop because it's the most ubiquitous piece of software out there, but Adobe charges more money than I would say was reasonably should charge for it, and you get a whole bunch of other crap you don't really need. And canceling the subscription is a lot harder than one might think if you ever have to. So that's why I recommend Krita. Now, Krita is a piece of software I have used for many years. It is fantastic. I love it. It checks more boxes than I would have thought it would have compared to Photoshop. It's very much a good Photoshop alternative, but for graphic design, it's actually pretty competent. There are layer styles. There are, you can create shapes, although most of them you have to create by custom. You can do a whole lot of things. Now, here's a caveat with Krita. Krita is geared primarily towards digital art, digital painting. And that is why it's not the perfect solution, but it gets the job done most of the same way. And that's gonna be a good theme in this video. It gets the job done, because everything I'm gonna be mentioning here, so here on out, it gets the job done. It's not gonna be the best thing ever, because that's what you get with the paid stuff. But if you're just starting out, you gotta remember, you got to make some compromises. Now, Krita includes something called Gmic QT. Now, what is Gmic QT? Well, Gmic itself is Gracie's magic for image computing, and it itself is a large topic for another video. But in the general gist of it, it's just a plugin that Krita comes with that allows you to use a ton of effects. Again, this is going to be a topic for another video, but just wait on that. That's going to be coming. Hopefully soon. Other software that can be used is Inkscape. Inkscape is primarily geared towards graphic design specifically. It's a good Adobe InDesign alternative, but I haven't used it a whole lot, so I can't say a whole ton about it. However, GIMP/Glimpse is a good Photoshop stand-in because that's what they're primarily geared towards as a Photoshop alternative. GIMP is complicated, whereas Glimpse is based on GIMP. It's much more focused on ease of use and stuff like that, but you can do a lot of stuff with GIMP, including the stuff that you would need to do for making thumbnails, other types of graphic design, other types of visual aids and stuff like that. But I stick with Krita most of the time because it worked the best for me so far. But those are also good options as well. Now, audio is a big and an important thing to get familiar with, but it's not quite as complicated as one might seem it is. It's the biggest term you may have seen thrown around is DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Now, what a DAW is just basically a piece of software that acts like a big giant physical workstation for mixing and recording audio. And that's what you would primarily use to record your audio with. Now, the audio side of things does not have a whole lot of free software available on its end. But the two that I can recommend the most is Audacity and Ardour. Now, Audacity is completely free. It's free open source. It's probably one of the more famous audio workstations out there when it comes to the free stuff. It's capable of everything that you would need to record, including VST support for its effects. Now, Ardour, on the other hand, is free. Now, I say that with a big in quotation marks because it's not completely free. You can use it for free, but it's limited. Now, here's the kicker here. Here's a big kicker. You could pay just $1 a month and get the full thing and no one will bat an eye. For the longest time, I had used Ardour for that. In fact, I think I'm still paying them the $1 a month, and I don't use it anymore. I use Acid Pro. But you can still pay the $1 a month and get the full thing. Now, you could pay them a little bit more, but that's up to you entirely because Ardour is fantastic. Now, compared to Audacity, Ardour is much more professionally focused. It includes much more functionality than the... Damn phone. Now, Ardour is much more professionally focused than Audacity because Audacity is the kind of basic. It's not the most functional, even if it has a ton of effects with VST support. But Ardour is much more geared towards mixing and recording. That's what's primarily geared towards, where Audacity is really just more towards editing and not really mixing and recording. However, it's a little more complicated and a little more of a learning curve to use it than it is for Audacity. If you're just starting out, I would recommend sticking with Audacity. And if you want to pay them a little more money a month for Ardour, then you can move up to that when you think you're ready. By the way, they're both fantastic DAWs. I've used both of them, one more than the other. And supporting it is always a great idea if you want them to continue developing this kind of software, because that's kind of a thing. That's gonna be kind of more of a topic for another video. But supporting software that is free with money is always a good idea if you can do it. But that's gonna be another topic for another video. Now, for my last subject, video editing. This is the largest and most complicated topic we're gonna be talking about here today, simply because it's the most compared to graphic design and audio, video editing software is probably the most critical aspect of your toolbox here, because it allows you to tie everything together and package it up and send it over to YouTube land or Twitch land or whatever you want to do it with. So I'll be focusing on 3 video editors here: DaVinci Resolve, Olive, and Kdenlive, because those are probably the ones they're all free, and they're ones I would recommend the most out of anything I've ever tried. And I've tried a lot of video editors in my time. Starting with DaVinci Resolve, it is the most well-known of the 3. It has a free and paid version. The free version is probably the one you want to go for, because the paid version has everything the free version has, but stuff that you don't need. It's mostly collaboration features. So if you're not working on a large team, which chances are if you're starting out, you're not, you don't need the paid version. So, but in the free version, you get an editor, a VFX compiler, a color grader, which, by the way, is DaVinci Resolve's claim to fame. DaVinci Resolve is world famous for its color grader, and you can't get any better than that. It's also an audio DAW in the exact same program. The only real drawback of DaVinci Resolve is that it relies heavily on system resources to play back video compared to other video editors, like Vegas Pro, Adobe Premiere, which aren't quite as CPU GPU heavy, but DaVinci Resolve is much more heavy in that respect. So if you're not running a high-spec system, you may struggle a little bit with DaVinci Resolve. But in this day and age where computers are faster than they ever have been, especially with this competition between AMD and Intel really heating up, hopefully. 10th gen really wasn't that great, but topic for another video again. But you should be fine if you have a decent system. You will recommend always building a computer yourself if you want to get more power, but again, that's a topic for another video. But that's where the other two come in. Kdenlive. Kdenlive is an acronym for KDE Nonlinear Video Editor. KDE is a group of software developers based in, I think, France, where they develop software for the free and open source community. And if you're using Linux, you probably heard of them. In fact, Krita from before is made by KDE. KDE? No. In fact, Krita from before is actually made by KDE. So, comes all full circle, right? Right? Yeah. Anyway, Kdenlive is a video editor geared towards basic to semi-pro video workflows. Again, you won't be making the big next blockbuster with this, but it will get the job done as long as you use it right. Although just be prepared to rage a little because KDE software, including Kdenlive, is notorious for being bloated, and they do crash a lot. But in recent updates during the recent code refactoring, especially with Kdenlive, the issue's been fixed to a certain extent. It still crashes, but not as much as it used to. So the program is much more stable. So as for the final editor, Olive has a ton of potential, but it comes with a caveat right now. Olive is still an alpha. It's not a fully complete program. However, as it stands right now, it's seriously one of the best video editors I've ever used on the free and open source side. Because while it may not have all the capabilities that some other editors do, it has much more capability than I would have expected at this phase of development. Right now, it's undergoing a complete rewrite to rewrite the entire back end of Olive. And I've tried some of the app images on my Linux machine, and it's going good. Some things don't work quite as well as they should, but you gotta remember it's still an alpha with a major rewrite going on. When that will be done, I don't know. I actually subscribed to their Patreon page to get some of these updates, and they haven't been posting a lot. But the way things are going with the app images I've been trying out, which are posting almost once a day, maybe a little more than once a day, it's working good. It's just be prepared to have a little bit more of a powerful system as the code stands right now, because it is a little more power hungry than the current version of Olive. But it's definitely something good to keep an eye on if you don't need fancy tools for the time being. If all you want to do is just kind of cut up some video and then put it on YouTube, Olive is great because it can do that, and it does it very well. If you're familiar, as for its interface, Olive is a lot like Premiere Pro. It's very similar in Premiere Pro in its layout. It's very similar in Premiere Pro in a lot of different ways. Even its rendering engine is actually based on, as it stands right now, is based on Premiere Pro. It's actually a really good program, so it's a good thing to keep an eye on if you're looking into getting something free. And the best thing about it is it's available for Linux. It's amazing because there's not a whole lot of video editors for Linux, but that's also going to be a topic for another video. Bonus round! So before we end off the video, I would like to mention one piece of software that can be used for animation if you want something that's free and that's really good, and that is Natron. Natron is a VFX compiler similar in functionality to the one in DaVinci Resolve. That can be used to make animations, pop-ups, lower thirds, any kind of animation, even alerts. It can be used for that. However, the only caveat with this is that it's very learning curve heavy. You have a high learning curve to take on when it comes to the software, because it is node based. It's not a traditional timeline based compositor. So if you think you can figure out the node based workflow, which when you do is hella efficient, you can create some pretty cool stuff. Otherwise, it's kind of not really bog standard, but just kind of similar to how other VFX compilers and animation software tends to work. But there you have it, free tools to put in your content creation toolbox. And with them, I'm certain you can create some pretty cool stuff. I know I have, to some extent. But if you like the video, absolutely be certain you subscribe, and clocking that like button would be great too. If you want more content from me, I stream every Thursday and Friday at 8 p.m. if work permits, Central Standard Time. And I also have a Discord with some very friendly people who would love to chat with you. But you can also chat with me, ask me questions. If you have anything that needs to be answered, I can certainly answer them. Hopefully. But I just love to chat, just to talk with you, get to know each other. We have plenty of channels to talk about just random stuff. Not that that's a great thing to talk about, but okay, whatever. But anyway, that's it for me. I'll see you guys later.